The idea we're unpacking today is, well, it's utterly counterintuitive, but it's also profoundly powerful. We're looking at sources that argue the path to these, extraordinary results isn't through some huge, painful life overhaul. It's through making changes so tiny, so minuscule, that they're almost invisible, what our sources call atomic habits.
That's the core thesis.
Okay.
And it's exactly why we're doing this deep dive. Our mission here is to really get into the fundamental laws of behavioral change. Because, most people who struggle with building better habits don't actually lack motivation. They just lack a practical, clearly defined system. We have to shift the focus away from just demanding more willpower and start concentrating on the mechanical, almost biological architecture of how habits get built and broken.
And to really grasp that, the exponential power of these tiny shifts, we have to start with one of the most famous turnarounds in modern sports history. I'm talking about the transformation of British professional cycling.
Right.
Before 2003, this organization was the definition of perpetual mediocrity. I mean, since the 1908 Olympics, they'd won a single gold medal, and in 110 years of the Tour de France, they had never, ever won the title. They were a laughingstock.
They were so consistently bad that when a new director, Dave Brailsford, came on board, a major European bike manufacturer actually refused to sell them bikes.
No way.
Seriously. They were genuinely afraid that associating their brand with British cycling would damage their reputation.
That's the baseline. So Brailsford comes in and introduces his strategy, which he famously called the aggregation of marginal gains. It wasn't about finding one massive improvement. It was about breaking down everything, and I mean everything, that goes into riding a bike and improving each component by just 1%.
And when you look at those changes, they seem absurdly small. They weren't just redesigning the bike frame. They were testing different types of massage gels to see which ones help muscles recover fastest. They redesigned the bike seats for more comfort. They were rubbing alcohol onto the tires for better grip. They even introduced electrically heated overshorts to keep muscles at the optimal temperature. These changes were so modest, almost invisible to an outsider.
They even painted the inside of the team truck white.
Right, to spot tiny dust particles that might degrade the meticulously clean bikes.
It sounds like a hyperfixation on details that wouldn't make a difference in a sprint, let alone the Tour de France. Why focus on something like spotting dust?
Because the philosophy demands that you believe in the system. That 1% change isn't what matters in the moment, it's what matters over time. Brailsford's confidence was all based on this idea that if you make enough of these tiny changes, the cumulative effect will lead to this disproportionate advantage.
And the results were just stunning. 5 years after he took over, the team utterly dominated the 2008 Beijing Olympics. They won 60% of the available gold medals in road and track cycling.
And that wasn't the peak. That was just the beginning of the curve. Between 2007 and 2017, British cyclists went on to win 178 world championships and secure 5 Tour de France victories. It just shows you that tiny changes, when they're applied consistently, don't just add up. They multiply.
That brings us to section 1, because we have to talk about this idea of nonlinear progress. Most of us assume habits operate on a straight line, but they actually compound. If you get 1% better every day for a year, the math is just staggering. You don't end up 3.65 times better, you end up nearly 37 times better.
And the reverse is equally true, which is why this is so important. Neglect and small negative choices also compound. Think about daily stressors: a slightly unhealthy lunch, an hour of lost sleep, a small argument. Individually, they're manageable. But when these small negative changes persist for years, they don't just add up. They multiply into serious long-term health issues, burnout, a dysfunctional relationship.
But this is where you, the listener, usually hit a wall. You're working out, you're eating better, you've put in weeks of effort, and you see nothing. That is the dreaded valley of disappointment.
That valley is the exact point where most people quit, right before the exponential results are about to kick in. We use the ice cube analogy here. If the temperature in a room goes from 25 degrees to 31 degrees, you've put energy into heating it, but there's no visible change to the ice cube. But that 1-degree shift from 31 to 32, that's what causes the melting. The change that seems no different from the others suddenly unlocks a massive visible result.
So if progress is inherently delayed and all that hard work is being stored beneath the surface for months, how do people stay motivated during that valley, before we even get to the 4 laws?
Well, you shift your focus. You shift it from outcomes to identity. The sources highlight that changing habits is hard for 2 main reasons. We try to change the wrong thing, the outcome, or we try to change it in the wrong way, the process. The fundamental difference is this. The system of beliefs, your identity, that has to change first.
Can you give us an example of that identity shift?
Yeah, the story of the entrepreneur Brian Clark is perfect. He was a lifelong nail biter. He stopped not through sheer willpower, but after getting his first ever professional manicure. When the manicurist complimented his hands, a switch just flipped. Suddenly, the identity he adopted was, I'm the type of person who properly cares for my nails.
Mhm.
The pride he felt in that new self-image was a much more powerful driver than just trying to stop a bad habit. The system changed because his self-perception changed.
That's the crucial move from having a goal like I want nice nails to being a type of person like I am a well-groomed person.
Exactly.
Let's get mechanical now and look at the actual architecture of a habit. All habits, good or bad, follow a four-step framework: cue, craving, response, and reward.
And this cycle is ancient. It dates back to E.L. Thorndike's research on cats and puzzle boxes. The cats learned that a specific action pulling a cord, pressing a lever, led to a satisfying consequence: escape and food. That reward caused the behavior to be repeated faster and more automatically over time. The habit gets etched into the neural pathways.
Which leads us to Law 1, make it obvious. The danger with automated habits is that you start operating on autopilot. The sources highlight just how non-conscious this stuff becomes. There's this chilling anecdote of a paramedic who, after years on the job, looked at her father-in-law's face one day and instinctively saw a pattern that indicated a major artery blockage. He felt perfectly fine. Her non-conscious system just spotted the cue.
And on the other side, there's the retail clerk who was used to cutting up used gift cards all day. And one day, completely on autopilot, she just cut up a customer's actual active credit card. If the cue is subtle or hidden, our non-conscious mind will often just default to the easiest or most repetitive response, regardless of logic.
So we need to design our environment so the cues for the good habits jump out at us. The classic and kind of funny example of this is the Schiphol Airport fly sticker in the men's urinals.
Yes, the cleaning staff put a small fly sticker near the center of the urinal. Men, whether they know it or not, are compelled to aim for a target. It was a clear, obvious cue that improved aim and cut cleaning costs by 8%. The lesson is simple. If the cue stands out, it gets noticed. Behavior follows.
And we can apply that concept choice architecture to much bigger things. Dr. Anne Thorndike, a physician in Boston, redesigned a hospital cafeteria without saying a word to anyone. The refrigerators next to the cash registers only had soda, so she made bottled water available in those high-visibility fridges as well.
And just by making the water obvious and easy to grab in that environment, soda sales dropped by over 11%, and water sales jumped over 25%. No lectures, no campaigns, just a subtle environmental change. This is why the mantra, one space, one use, is so powerful. If you only associate your desk with work or your bed only with sleep, the context becomes a clear, obvious cue for that action.
Okay, so if Law 1 is about where we act, Law 2 has to address how we feel about the action. Let's tackle Law 2, make it attractive.
This is where we get into the neuroscience of it all. Habits are a powerful dopamine-driven feedback loop. But here's the critical insight from the sources. Dopamine is not the pleasure chemical, it's the wanting chemical. It spikes when a cue is recognized, creating that intense feeling of desire, the craving that makes us act.
And the biology on this is very clear. The sources note that the brain has far more neural circuitry for wanting rewards. 100% of the nucleus accumbens is activated for craving than for actually liking the reward. Our brains are hardwired to chase desire, not satisfaction.
And we can exploit this biological drive with something called temptation bundling. You combine a behavior you need to do with a behavior you want to do. The best example is Ronan Byrne, an electrical engineering student who wanted to exercise more but loved watching Netflix.
So he linked them together.
Precisely. He programmed his stationary bike to pause Netflix unless he maintained a certain pedaling speed. He was forced to connect the low-probability behavior, cycling, with a high-probability behavior, watching his show. The sources call this using Premack's principle. You combine the desirable thing to reinforce the necessary but less desirable one. Suddenly, cycling wasn't a chore. It was the ticket to enjoyment.
That makes the less attractive habit feel attractive just by association. What about beyond personal hacks? What about the social environment?
Well, we're herd animals. We imitate the habits of three groups. The close, like family and friends. The many, our culture. And the powerful, those we admire. New habits become so much more attractive and easier to achieve when you join a culture where your desired behavior is the normal behavior.
So if you want to get fit, don't just follow some generic workout plan. Join a community where fitness is the norm. like the example of Nerd Fitness, a community that leverages mutual interests like Star Wars and gaming to help misfits get healthy.
Exactly. When the desired behavior feels like something that people like you already do,
Yeah.
the craving to fit in makes that habit powerfully attractive.
Let's move on to Law 3, make it easy. This is the law of least effort. Everything we do, from a tiny decision to a huge societal trend, follows the path of least resistance.
And this isn't just about laziness. It's a deep principle of energy conservation. We see this even in history. The sources point out that agriculture spread 2 to 3 times faster across Europe and Asia, which are on an east-west axis, than it did across the north-south axis of the Americas and Africa.
Wait, farming speed was dictated by geography?
Because locations along the same east-west latitude share similar climates and seasons. That reduced the friction for early farmers. They could easily transport seeds and livestock and know they would thrive. Moving north or south meant constant difficulty, the friction of having to domesticate totally new crops, adapt livestock to different environments. Friction dictates the ease of action, even over centuries.
Wow. So if friction is king, we need to prime the environment to make the good actions as frictionless as possible.
Yes. Think about Oswald Knuckles' strategy, which he calls being proactively lazy. Before he leaves the room, he puts the remote back or he folds the blanket. His point is, you're not just cleaning up the past, you are reducing friction for your future self. When he gets back to the couch later, there is zero barrier to sitting down and relaxing.
And if that's how we promote good habits, how do we use this law to break bad ones?
You invert it. Make bad habits hard. You maximize the friction. Consider Victor Hugo. He was desperate to finish The Hunchback of Notre Dame, but kept getting distracted by socializing. So he had his assistant lock away all his street clothes, leaving him with only a large shawl. He created a physical commitment device that made leaving the house immensely difficult, forcing him to stay home and write.
That's a brilliant, if maybe extreme, example. What about modern, less sartorial commitment devices?
We can automate the difficulty. Automation is a fantastic way to handle necessary habits, good or bad, by removing the constant need for conscious decisions. The classic positive example is automatic wage deductions for retirement savings. A great example of automated difficulty is the one you mentioned, having someone periodically reset your passwords for distracting apps.
It's fantastic. If my assistant resets the password every Monday and only gives me the new one on Friday, the friction of trying to find that password during the week is so high that I just won't bother.
Yeah.
I've engineered the environment to make the bad habit difficult.
Exactly. You've used friction to protect your focus.
That leads perfectly to our final principle, Law 4. Make it satisfying. This is often called the cardinal rule of behavior change. What is immediately rewarded is repeated.
And this is where the conflict between our ancient brain and our modern life is most acute. Our Paleolithic brains are wired for immediate return environments. Hunting and gathering give you instant feedback. You hunt, you eat. Modern life, though, is a delayed return environment. Saving for retirement, exercising for future health, studying for a degree, they offer almost zero immediate reward.
So we have to find ways to bridge that gap and manufacture immediate satisfaction. Otherwise, our System 1 emotional brain will choose the easy, immediate pleasure every single time.
Look at the public health worker Stephen Luby's work in Karachi promoting hand washing. People already knew it was important, but consistency was the issue. His team provided Safeguard soap, which foamed easily and smelled fantastic.
So the soap itself provided the immediate positive sensory feedback.
Yes. It made the experience instantly pleasurable and satisfying. It wasn't about education. It was about the immediate reward of that creamy foam and great scent. That's what made the habit stick.
And if you can't get a physical sensory reward, the next best thing is a visual one. That's where measurement comes in. Tell us about Trent Darsmid's paperclip strategy.
Darsmid was a stockbroker just starting out, and he used 2 jars on his desk. One jar held 120 paper clips, representing the 120 sales calls he had to make each day. Every time he made a call, he moved a clip to the empty jar. He had visible, measurable, immediate progress. That simple act provided powerful, instant satisfaction and helped him eventually land a 6-figure job. Habit tracking leverages multiple laws at once. It makes the habit obvious and makes the progress satisfying.
So we've built the habit. How do we keep it from collapsing under the weight of time? We have to talk about sustaining motivation.
This is where the Goldilocks rule comes into play. Maximum motivation happens when you're working on tasks of just manageable difficulty. The task needs to be right on the edge of your current abilities. If it's too hard, you fail and get discouraged. If it's too easy, you get bored, and boredom is the enemy of consistency.
We see this balance perfectly in the long career of Steve Martin. It took him 18 years to become an overnight success. 10 years learning, 4 years refining, 4 years wildly successful. He continually expanded his routine, pushing himself, but he always made sure he kept enough easy, guaranteed laugh jokes in the set.
That blend of just enough easy success to maintain confidence and just enough difficult content to stave off boredom is what kept him motivated. The right level of challenge prevents stagnation.
It's also vital to make sure you're playing the game that actually favors your specific strengths. Genes don't determine your destiny, but they absolutely clarify what you should be working hard on. The strategy here is simple. If you can't win by being better, win by being different.
Look at Scott Adams, the creator of the Dilbert comic strip. He's not the world's greatest artist, he's not the funniest comedian or the most skilled business professional. But he combines several average skills drawing, a specific type of humor, and a background in the corporate world to create a unique category where he faced almost no competition. He designed a game he knew he could win.
That is a total reframing of how we should pursue success. It's not about finding the one thing you are best at, but finding the unique combination of things you are good at.
And finally, even once you're performing at a high level, top athletes prevent the slow, gradual slide of unmonitored habits through ongoing review. Whether it's the marathoner Eliud Kipchoge or the swimmer Katie Ledecky, they meticulously track their training, diet, and wellness notes for weekly coach review. The sources even recommend an integrity report, a semi-annual check-in to ask tough questions. Are my habits still aligned with the identity I want to embody? Do I need to upgrade or dial back?
So, what does this all mean for you, the listener? The difference between where you are today and where you want to be tomorrow is often just a few productive, healthy choices made at decisive moments, stacked day after day. The small things are the big things.
They absolutely are. We've established that the four laws, making it obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying, are the mechanical levers for change. But to tie this all back to our opening thought, we have to remember that emotions drive behavior. The brain's primary operating mode, System 1, is driven by feelings and rapid judgments. That's the craving. Rational analysis, System 2, always comes later.
So, if the logical choice like exercising or cleaning up doesn't feel right in the moment because the cue is too weak or the friction is too high, we just won't do it.
Correct. The challenge isn't to be smarter or to have more willpower. It's to design a world your environment, where the right choice feels attractive and easy to that non-conscious emotional System 1 brain.
You have to be the architect and the designer of your world, not just a consumer reacting to it. We challenge you today to find one environmental cue you can make more obvious, or one piece of friction you can eliminate right now. Start that tiny atomic change and trust in the power of compounding.